with you, that's fine. But I emailed this yesterday, I think. So you have in your D2L email essentially the final exam, okay? And I've given you I guess what I'd call 3 different kinds of options, okay, to write about for your final. The first 3 are just on the Garth Nix novels, okay? So you've got 3 topics there, and it is specifically limited to Sabriel and Lirael, but if you've read Abhorsen and want to include Abhorsen, you are definitely allowed to. But you're required to have, for all 3 of the answers, you're required to have 2 quotes from Lirael and 2 quotes from Sabriel. If you have any from Abhorsen, that'd be fine. If you have read Abhorsen, that'll actually strengthen any one of those responses, okay? I really wish I hadn't been so sick earlier in the semester because I would have liked to include. The second option has, I should have divided that a little bit better. The second option has kind of 2 options to it, and that is to write essentially about all the novels, okay? And let me go over this one, or these 2 options real briefly. So the fourth question, thinking of all the works you've read this semester, Chronicles of Prydain, Bartimaeus Trilogy, these 2 books, and then maybe Abhorsen if you add it, which work or works has had or have had the greatest effect on you and why? Don't simply say, I liked X. Give me reasons. Tell me how the works, quote, changed you, made you look at the world differently, made you think of questions you never thought of before, etc., etc. Quote from the work or works and comment on the quotations. This is the one question where if you want to focus on solely one book, you can. All 4 quotations can be from a single novel. Okay? But whatever your quotations are, they've really got to support your point. So it's, again, it can't be, can't be like a 3-word, yes, I will, quotation. It needs to be, something kind of meaty, okay? The second option under the reply to all the novels kind of a thing is that quote from the High King that Terence says, every man is a hero if he strives more for himself. Sorry, other way around. Strives more for others than for himself. Argue that what Terence says in this novel is also a central theme of the Bartimaeus trilogy and Nix's novels. So with that one, you need to respond to both the Bartimaeus novels and these 2. And I give you, a number of quotations to give. You have to have a substantive quotation from 2 of the Bartimaeus novels. I don't care which 2, just any 2, okay? And you have to have substantive quotation from the 2 Nix novels. So you'll have at least 4 quotes, okay? And then the very last option, which I discussed on Friday if you were here, is you can take one of your previous essay exams, okay? Rewrite it, revise it, resubmit it. That will be your 3rd paper, okay? But if you do that, a couple things. You got to submit the original one that I marked up because I want to be able to look at the revision and the original and see that you have revised it, okay? So what will end up in the grade book is you'll have whichever paper. You'll have first paper, second paper, and the 3rd paper, even though the 3rd paper is rewriting of one of those. Maybe this was a C, maybe this will be a B. That's going to raise it a little bit. Maybe this was an F, this is a C. That's going to raise your grade significantly. It's not going to raise it to a C, but it's going to, it's going to raise it, assuming one of the other ones was better. Okay? Regan, did I see you come in? Yes, sir. Okay, so pick picking up then around page 428, 429. So let's recap a little bit. Lirael's a Claire, but she can't see. By the time we pick up here, she is now 19, I believe. Okay? She can't see yet, she's not going to see. It's pretty much, even though nobody will tell her that, it's pretty clear she's not going to see. So she and the disreputable dog, follow a trail, so to speak, and they go across this bridge and they find a couple things. They find a book. They find this weird mirror-like thing, okay? And then they realize they get caught, okay? And the twins, St. R and Rael, see her, and they talk with her about what they've seen, and the watch, we're told, just prior to this, for the first time ever, has seen Lirael. Now, we're told that during Lirael's lifetime, she's never been seen by the watch. Okay? That is, when a certain number of the Claire get together, they go into this one kind of room and they have the vision thing kind of thing. Okay? She's never been seen. Now she has. And she's been seen in a place that the Claire didn't even know exist. Okay? A room, a hall, beneath or deep down in the glacier. Okay? Well, where is it that they find her? She's found on Lirael's path. And we discover that she has been seen before. Like 1,000 years before. So the Claire, a long, long, long time ago, saw her, created this room essentially for her. Okay? And so now, they're there to tell her, we've seen you, and here's what we've seen. So they take her, and she sees what they saw. Okay? And what does she see? Anybody remember?
She's on a pond or something.
She's on a lake. Okay? First, just before then, she's going to be seen with Nicholas. Okay? But she sees Hedge. She sees Nicholas. She sees the digging they're doing. She senses the free magic around Hedge. Okay? He doesn't see her. She sees all this. She watches Nick in Hedge. And then Hedge sees her. Okay? And then Nick, very, very briefly, sees her too. Okay? He reaches one hand out, and then, she's pulled back. Okay? So Rael says, 443, you saw. Lirael says, yes. So, do they know what this means? No. All they know is that it's important and that it's coming up. It's this coming summer. Why? Because Lirael doesn't look any different than she looks now. Okay, so she's got to be about the same age. They know Hedge is a necromancer. They can smell the free magic about him. So she has to leave. She is outfitted by the Claire. I'm skipping a whole bunch. She's outfitted by the Claire. She's put in the boat finder, and she goes. Okay, and we're going to skip a lot over the next 100 pages or so, because most of what happens from I was just at the beginning of the chapter. Chapter 31 to maybe not 100 pages, or page 453 until chapter 34 or so, the third section, I think it is, part 3, is kind of the adventures of Samath. He's been stabbed, and it's his kind of moving farther west, trying to get closer to where Nick is. Okay, he meets up with Mogget. Mogget essentially saves him and such. And we see a variety of things that happens with Nick. And then picking up with part 3, we go back to Sabriel. Okay, so with Sabriel, we go down the river. Lirael. we go down the river, and chapter 35, titled Remembrancer. She's speaking with the dog, and she reads the blade, okay? Because she's been given a sword, she has the book, she has the mirror. She's been given a sword, and the sword reads, top of 539, or has inscribed on it, "The clare saw me, the wall makers made me, my enemies remember me." Okay? Now this is right after Lirael's kind of going over in her mind, she's saying it out loud actually, what the bells are. Now she doesn't have bells, right? What does she have? She has the panpipes, the flute, okay? Which are kind of like a practice version of the bells, okay? My father-in-law was a bagpiper, okay? But he didn't play the pipes all the time. If he wanted to practice, he'd pull out a chanter so that he could practice his fingering on the chanter. Couldn't do his breathing and all that with the bag and such, but it was something to use to practice. So she's going through the bells, so to speak, on the pipes, okay, and going over their names and learning what they are. 538, back up for just a second. So she's gone through the names of the bells. Go back for a moment to 537, or the pipes. Rana, number 1. Mosrael, number 2. Rana, the sleep bringer. Mosrael, the waker. Kibbeth, the walker. Direm, the speaker. Belgair, the thinker. Sereneth, the binder. And Astarael, the sorrowful. Okay? And so the dog hears all that and just says, sleeper, waker, walker, speaker, thinker, binder, weeper. Shh. So then she reads the sword. And the dog says, a sister sword to binder. I didn't know they had that one. What's it called? Nehemah, she says. What does that mean? It's a name. I suppose you could say it means forget me not, though the irony is that Nehemah herself is long forgotten. That is, forget me not. What's the title of the chapter? Remembrancer. It's a thing to remind. Okay? So the sword is something to remind. Okay? We're going to skip a bit. 543. She goes into death. Okay? Dog follows her. She says, how did you get here? I followed you. It's just a different sort of walk. Little clue there, by the way. I'll give something away if it's not already clear by the time you get to this. The dog is Kibbeth. Okay? The 7 bells are named for 7 free magic beings. Okay? That some of them, back at the creation of the charter, sacrificed themselves to become the charter, and bear in mind, in the world, where does the charter reside? Abhorsons, royalty, Clare, what are the other 2 places? The wall and the stones. That's 5. There were originally 9 what are called shiners. Okay? So here's 5 of them. There's 4 more. The last of the shiners is the one that has to be solved or resolved at the end of Abhorsen. That's number 9. So then you have 6, 7, and 8 yet to deal with, or yet to figure out who they are. There are going to be clues given. Okay? I really wish we could talk about or get into Abhorsen, but we can't. So, Kibbeth is the walker. What did the dog say? It's a different sort of walk. Okay? So, she goes into death and using, the mirror and such, and she sees her mother. Okay? Pages 548 and following. What does she see her mother doing?
Conception.
Yeah, she's essentially propositioning a man old enough to be her father. Why? She saw him. That was her sight. A one-night stand with this man. For what purpose? Have a child. Why? She doesn't know. She doesn't know what the purpose of this child will be. She does know she will have a child. She tells him, don't worry, I will conceive. And he says something about, kid's not going to have much of a father. And she says, she won't have much of a mother either, because she'll die fairly soon. Page 549. This is not a matter of love, she says. A single night may beget a child as well as a year of striving, as it will, for I have seen her. As to the lack of a father, I fear she will have neither parent for very long. Okay? She says, I see only a single thread in this, sir. I am here, called by the visions granted by my blood, as you are governed by yours. It is meant to be, cousin. So, let's go to bed. And he's like, what the hell? Why not? Okay? That man is whom? Which one?
Sabriel's father.
Sabriel's father. Okay? So, she finishes that vision, and something comes to attack her in death. 554. Hedge. Okay? Now, Hedge physically is where?
Digging the hole.
Yeah, he's over at the lake with Nick, several hundred miles away. Okay? So, he tries to attack her, and she bends, 555. She kind of pretends to kneel, bows down, and she's able to, because she's got those pipes hanging around here, she's just able to get her mouth on one of them. She blows as hard as she can. Which pipe is it? Kibeth. Okay? The sound struck Hedge as he swung for a beheading blow, caught his feet with joyful trickery. Why? What does Kibeth do? It makes the one who hears it walk. So he loses control of his legs. She's now kind of controlling him to an extent. Okay? And she escapes. Okay? She talks to the dog. 559. And we get a whole bunch of what in literary terms, techniques, whatever, is called exposition. Exposition that probably would have been really, really useful in the first book. But it's not as necessary in the first book because all of this isn't as important in the first book. So, she says to the dog, 559, there's free magic in you, maybe even more than the charter magic in your collar. Why aren't you like the necromancer? Okay? Because free magic is supposed to be bad. He says, in the beginning. Very biblical phrase, right? That's how Genesis begins. All magic was free magic. What is free magic? Unconstrained, raw, unchanneled. Sounds kind of like what from the Bartimaeus books? The other place. Nothing's constrained there. There's no definition. There's no delineation. So, then the charter was created, which took most of the free magic and made it ordered, subject to structure, constrained by symbols. And I wasn't kidding when I said it's very biblical, because in the biblical story, the way it's sometimes interpreted is, when God says in the beginning, "Let there be light," the way some have interpreted that is the chaos that exists before is now ordered. Okay? The Greek word cosmos means structure, imply order on something. Before cosmos, there was chaos. So, the free magic that remained separate from the charter, he says, is the free magic of necromancy. And he mentions kinds of creatures. It is the random magic that persists outside the charter. In other words, some free magic didn't go into making of the charter. There is also the free magic that helped make the charter but was not consumed by it. Okay? That's quite different from the free magic that wouldn't join in the creation of the charter. She's like, wait, you speak of the beginning. Could that be before the charter doesn't have a beginning or an end? Everything has a beginning, including the charter. I should know. I was there at the beginning of it. At the birth of it, sorry. Where did she think the dog came from?
The statue.
The little soapstone statue, which she found, and then she did what? She made that wire thing, put some cloth on it, infused some charter magic in it. And the dog saying, the thing that you thought you made? I was there at the birth of it. When the 7 chose to make the charter, and the 5 gave themselves to the making. You were there too, mistress. You were descended from the 5. Why? She's one of those. Okay? But she's also one of those. So, she says the 5 great charters, and then she recites the nursery rhyme that we heard in the first book in Sabriel. 5 great charters knit the land, together linked hand in hand. 1 in the people who wear the crown, 2 in the folk. 1 in the people who wear the crown, there's 1. 2 in the folk who keep the dead down, that's abhorsens. 3 and 5 become stone and mortar. 4 sees all in frozen water. Okay? The great charters are the keystones of the charter, the bloodlines, the wall, the charter stones, etc. All come from the, notice, original sacrifice of the 5. So the 5 sacrificed themselves to become this. Okay? Some of those in turn passed that power into stone and mortar when blood alone was judged to be too easily diluted. So she says, okay, so I'm trying to make sense of this. The 5 were dissolved into the charter. What happened to the other 2? Because he said, when the 7 chose the 5, but I said there were 9. We're going to get to that in a moment. So these 5 come from the 7. So we still have 6 and 7. You said there were 7 who chose to make the charter. It began with the 9. 9 who were the most powerful, who possessed the conscious thought, foresight, that raised them above all the tens of thousands, this is page 561, of free magic beings that clamored and strove to exist upon the earth. Of the 9, only 7 agreed to make the charter. So that means 8 and 9 disagreed, let's say, with the 7. I'm not going to say they fought against, but they disagreed with the 7. Okay? 1 chose to ignore the 7's work. So separate 8. So 6, 7. 8 stands by itself. And then we have 9. The 9th fought and was barely defeated. Why was the 9th barely defeated? Because the 9th was the most powerful of all of them. You have all kinds of elements of mythology in here as well. This is like the Greek mythology, where the Olympians overthrow the Titans, etc., etc. Okay? So 6 and 7, 8 and 9. 9 is what's essentially being dug up. Okay? 9 is what hedge is all about. I'm not going to give away too much. So, she said, okay, what happened to 6 and 7? Why didn't they become? They put a great deal of their power into the bloodlines, but not all their being. But I suspect they were perhaps less tired of conscious individual existence. They wished to go on in some form or another. I think they wanted to see what happened. The 7 did have names. They were remembered in the bells and in the pipes. Each of those bells has something of the original power of the 7, the power that existed before the charter. You're not one of the 7, are you? 562. She couldn't imagine. Notice the language that Lirael uses now. She couldn't imagine that one of the creators of the charter, that is, one of the creators, no matter how much power it had given away, would condescend to be her friend. What does the word condescend mean?
She's not worthy.
Okay. Look at it from the other side. That's talking about Lirael as being not worthy. What does that mean about the one who condescends? You lower yourself. Okay? What is it she's talking about again? A creator. That a creator, a seemingly, with these seven, nearly all-powerful being, would do what? Would lower itself. Look at the language used again. No matter how much power it had given away. Okay? That is exactly the kind of language that's used in the Christian story. Christ, second person of the Trinity, does what? Leaves the glory of heaven, condescends to become human, a person, etc. I don't know that Nix is intending that, but I can't believe that he's not when he uses the word like condescend. Or would continue to do so once its true loftiness had been established. That is, or that who's she talking about or thinking about? It's the dog. Okay? The dog. That once its real identity was known, it would not do what? Rise back into, the glory it ought to have. I'm the disreputable dog. Just a leftover from the beginning, freely given to the charter. Notice what the dog says about itself. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. Showing what? Humility. Compare, for a moment, the dog and how the dog behaves and how the dog acts with Mogget. Does Mogget ever show humility? No. Mogget's what? Get me a fish, slave. Even though Mogget's the slave. Okay? So, I'll always be your friend, Lirael. She senses, as she's rubbing her hands and sniffing the dog and stuff, the dog senses something. Free magic. Okay? And so the dog tells her, 564, so you are a remembrancer now, the first in these last 500 years, unless I am mistaken. See, the dog didn't just help create the stuff at the beginning and then poof, pop into existence now. The dog's been around, okay? So, go on to, let's see here. 570. They see a wash tub floating in the river, okay? Because that's how Mogget and Sam escaped from the dead hands. And they see Mogget and they see Sam. Sam's wounded. And notice on 570. The cat spoke. What are you doing here? Now that's not the cat talking to Lirael. Humph, replied the dog. I thought someone as slippery as you would know the answer to that. What are you called now? And who is that sorry ragamuffin with you? I am called Mogget most of the time. What name do you? Okay. Sam, speaks for himself. So Lirael talks to Sam, tells her who she is. He can't believe she's a daughter of the Clear. Why? She doesn't look like one. She's not dressed like one. Okay. She's dark-haired. She has odd clothes, etc., etc. Okay. So Mogget tells them, 572, who Sam is. So now what do we have? We have a daughter of the Clare who is also half Horsenish, whatever. We have a member of the royalty, and we have at least one of these. Because the dog is one of these two. Okay? He's not one of the five, because they're gone. They're in these. So he is one of these two. Okay? And the dog says 573. He is a royal prince, all right. I can smell his blood. He's wounded, etc., etc. He says, I know the Maggid, abhorrent servant. Okay. Let's see. We're going to skip a bunch. Go on to chapter 38, the Book of the Dead. So they talk about Nicholas. Sam tells him what he thinks he's doing. He says, Nick's not himself. He's being tricked. Page 584. They talk about how Nick got there. And Sam explains. Hold on a second. Nick never really understood what it was like here, or accepted the idea that magic works. Why? Why didn't Nick, okay, here's the wall, here's the old kingdom, here's Encelstierre, here's Encelstierre. Nick's from down here, right? What is this place supposed to be? Modern day, our world. Put in the Harry Potter terms, this is Muggle reality. This is wizarding reality. Okay? This is the world of, for lack of a better phrase, science. It's where science holds sway. What do I mean by science? The word science comes from scio, okay, which means to know, knowledge, fact, okay? Stuff that you can quantify and test, objective reality. What about up here? No. This is where magic holds sway. This is, what's the opposite of science? Myth? No. If this is to know, mystery. Because a mystery cannot be known. A real mystery. Agatha Christie did not write mysteries. She wrote whodunits. John Grisham doesn't write mysteries. He writes whodunits. Because at the end of every novel, what do you discover? Who did it? Who did the crime? Who did the murder? Blah, 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 blah. A mystery is something that cannot be resolved. Okay? Maybe there are no real mysteries. In my, Orthodox Christian tradition, what are called in the Catholic Church the seven sacraments. In the Orthodox Church, they're called mysteries. Why? Jesus' birth. Yeah, explain that really. God, not matter, spirit, becomes 7 pounds, 2 ounces, crapping out the diapers and everything. Wrap your head around that. The resurrection, you can't. You can't scientifically explain that, right? It's a mystery, okay? So, what is Nick? He's a scientist. What's he think he's going to do with this lightning trap?
Harness energy.
He wants to harness its energy. He thinks it's some natural phenomenon. For him, there is a natural explanation to everything. There is a scientific explanation to everything. But there isn't, is there? Okay? What was his scientific explanation for what happened at the beginning of the novel? With the bus. He didn't really have one. Okay? So, Sam goes on page 584. And he says, talking about Encelstierre, Lirael says, I don't understand it. I mean, I've heard about it, right? But it might as well be another world. Sam's been there. So Sam, who's grown up, lived here, went to school down here, he says what about this world? Page 584. He says it's always seemed somehow less real than here. A really detailed dream, but sort of washed out, like a thin watercolor. Softer somehow, even with their electric light and engines and everything. I guess it was because there was hardly any magic at school. We were too far from the wall. I could weave shadows and do tricks with light sometimes, but only when the wind blew. Sometimes I felt like part of me was asleep. And I think what Nick's is suggesting, I could be entirely wrong, that maybe this, which is really our world, isn't all. And in doing so, he's going back not to a Christian idea, but he's going back to Plato's allegory of the cave. Okay? Plato, teacher of Aristotle. In Plato's, do I have time for this? No, we don't. In Plato's allegory of the cave, real quickly, this is the wall. People sitting here, sometimes some standing, okay? And behind them right here, you got a big fire burning, okay? And this is the cave, and the opening's out here, okay? So you have people, and there's another wall in front of them here. You have people in this cave, okay? Some of them are bound and chained. These are people walking. These are people sitting, and they are bound. Okay, so there's a big fire back here, and the fire does what? It creates light, right? You have these bodies in front of the light, so what happens? You have their shadows cast onto this wall, right? Plato says our lives here are like this. What we experience here are the shadows. This isn't real. We are in the cave. Okay? Because what he does in this myth, in this story, is he says, okay, so work with me here. So if these people are bound, they can't move, all they can see is what's ahead of them. And there are these people behind them that they can't hear, that are creating shadows on the wall in front of them. So their experience of what's on this wall is what they understand to be real. That's their only reality, right? Right. Okay. So then take the person who is chained here, unchain them, and lead them out the cave. Take them out here to where they see the real sunshine. What's going to happen? What happens to their understanding of reality? Yeah, boom. It's totally destroyed. Because now what do they understand? What they thought it was real. It wasn't. It wasn't. This was what? A fake imitation or a poor copy of what is real. Plato said that's what our lives are. He said, according to this, the real world is the world of ideals or forms, which is out there. And everything we see around us down here, it's a copy. It's a shadow of that real thing. So when we look at light, it's not as light as it could be, because the real light is so much brighter. Which is why, in talking about ideals and forms, he said things like, this isn't a real bottle. I know it looks like one, it feels like one, it acts like one. It is an imitation of a bottle. That is, it has bottlishness, if you want. Why? Because there is a real form of bottle somewhere. Because look, they're different, aren't they? Slightly different shape. One's a little taller, one's a little fatter. Okay? So they both have bottle qualities, but if you're going to say they're which one's the bottle? Well, neither of them are. There is a real idea of bottle out there somewhere that these are copies of. Okay? Where was I going with that? So, Sam says, this down here, it's like a copy, a pale imitation of what's real. Our world, a pale imitation of what's real. Nick thinks this is everything. Plato's student Aristotle said, we can never know that world. We can never know that realm. This is the only world we can know. Okay? Socrates, Plato's teacher, said, that's the only one that's important. And the only way you get there is by acquiring wisdom. What do you get if you acquire wisdom? You learn or you attain the summum bonum. Summum bonum means highest good, which Socrates defined as God. That's why he was put to death by the Athenian people. Because he said there's one God. There's not Zeus and Hera and all these others. Okay? So, Sam says it's not real down there. Okay? So they keep talking, and they talk about Hedge. And Lirael doesn't really, think much of Sam. And the dog tells her 587, he's been through a lot. He's been tested beyond all expectation. He's hurt. He's afraid. He'll be better tomorrow. She says, it's his job. He's the abhorsen in waiting. Okay? And she says, all who bear the blood, top of 588, must defend the charter. Well, who's all who bear the blood? Abhorsens and royalty and Claire. Notice, Lirael has that and that. Sam has that and that. Okay? Because she says half aunt, as she's going to discover later on. And so she asks, 588, why is everything so difficult? Why does life have to be so hard? Notice his answer. No platitudes. No pablum. No, oh, it'll be okay. Just have faith. No, it just is. Suck it up. Move on to the next problem. Okay? So, they're getting zapped by mosquitoes. And what does Sam do? He pulls out this little mechanical frog he made. And he winds it up, and what does it do? It flies around and eats mosquitoes. And the dog's like, made it for my mother. It's the only thing I'm good at. Making things. Well, what are we going to find out about Sam? He's got an element, not of the wall, but of the wall makers in him. Because he's a maker. He's a creator of sorts. Okay? He says, it's the only thing I'm really good at. Go on, 590, 591. He talks about death. Says he's afraid of death. Yeah, raise your hand if you're not. That's what I thought. He was the abhorsen son, the abhorsen in waiting. This is Lirael thinking. Simply wasn't possible he could be afraid of death. Sam says, you went into death. Were you afraid? Yes. But I followed what it said in the book. He's like, whoa, what book are you talking about? Book of the Dead? She goes, no. And so she tells him of the book. He tells her the Book of the Dead. She's like, you mind if I take a peek? So she asks to look at the bells, and he's like, I don't know if I should do that. I'll be careful. And he says, okay, if you really want to, 592. Sam watched her touch the bells and shivered. Remember how cold and heavy they had felt upon his chest. Lirael's scarf had fallen back out, letting her long hair. Okay? And so she's got the bells out. Could I have a look at the book? It could destroy you. She goes, I know. I can't explain. I must read it. Says, okay. So he goes to sleep, and what does she do? She spends the whole night and reads the whole book. 595. She was physically exhausted, mentally invigorated. Ever had that experience? Your body is dead tired and your mind is just like you've on electricity. That's how she is. Why? Purpose. Purpose. She now knows. She can't put it in words, but she knows this is what I meant for. Only the last page, 596, stayed fixed in her mind. Does the walker choose the path or the path the walker? Okay. 598. Sam decides to take a close look at the dog's collar. And Lirael says, why do you want to look at the dog's collar? He says, it's got charter marks I've never seen. And then he realizes, wait a second, because he thought it was leather imbued with charter marks. It's not leather. It's just charter marks. That is, it doesn't have a, I guess, physical reality. If you think of charter marks as just being like atoms, it's just made up of tightly packed atoms. Nothing but charter marks, a great sea of marks stretching into forever. He felt as if he could push his whole hand into the collar or dive in himself. And he thinks, pulls his hand away, scratches the dog. She felt like a normal dog, just like Mogget felt like a cat. But both were intensely magical beings. Only Mogget's collar was a binding spell of great force. Remember what the dog said? Eight and nine. 9 opposed them. 9 fought against the 7. 8 didn't take a stance. And 8 was bound. Okay? Also, 8 is Mogget. Okay? 8 is Mogget. So, the dog is 6 or 7. Notice the dog freely gave of itself. Okay? Lowered itself, all that kind of stuff. Mogget didn't. Almost, the dog's collar was something very different, almost like a part of the charter itself. It had something of the feel of a charter stone. Okay? And Sam says, some of those marks are familiar, but I can't think where I've seen them. They're different than Mogget's collar. Dog says, you think too much. I think that's the dog essentially saying, don't inquire. Don't press. Okay? Let's skip a bunch. They go under the bridge and they're about to be attacked. And Lirael realizes, page 615, that whatever else Sam is, he's not a coward. He's a powerful charter mage and such. Okay? So they are attacked. And the only thing that finally saves them, page 16 and 17, is the dog. Okay? They see the crossbowman up in the window. Lirael missed him when she took a shot. He took a shot, Sam protected him. And we're told at the bottom of the page, the dog moved up next to Lirael, raised her head, and howled in eerie high tone. Notice, a high tone, not like a dog's regular howl. High tone, kind of like a bell ringing. Okay? And what happens? The dog drew breath and howled again. The assassin dropped his crossbow so he could jam his fingers in his ears, but even then he couldn't block out the terrible sound, and his legs moved of their own accord. Just like when Lirael in death blew on the flute that was Kibeth, and Hedge's legs moved, the dog reaches this tone, and the thing he's directing it at starts moving without its will. And his legs moved of their own accord, stepping out into space. The guy walked out the window, 400 feet above. He tried to hurl his upper body backwards into the room. He seemed to have no control, and then he keeps falling. And Lirael asks, what did you do? 618, I made him walk. Why? Because the dog is, or the dog has, still within it, part of Kibeth. Lirael nodded, gave the dog a hug. Sam watched them warily. That howl was pure free magic. No charter magic in it at all. Why no charter magic? Because what charter magic the dog had, it put into the creating of the charter. What the dog is left is that free magic being that has done what? Has condescended to stay around people. Okay? And Sam thinks the dog seemed friendly and appeared to be devoted to Lirael, but he could not forget how dangerous she was. Why? Why does he think that? Well, he wasn't there when the dog discussed all of this. Sam doesn't know about this yet. Okay? Something about the howl reminded him of some magic he had experienced that he couldn't quite place. And he thinks, well, at least Mogget I can understand. He used free magic, bound and safe while he wore the collar. Notice, safe. As long as that collar's on him. The dog appeared to be a free will blend of the two magics, completely beyond anything Sam had ever heard about. Okay? Can't wait to talk to Mom about him. So they go on. Free magic 41 and the flesh of swine. They get attacked again. And the dog and Mogget, after they get attacked and do away with the, hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Yeah, do away with the other free magic being. Page 636. Lirael asks the dog to keep watch. And so the dog lies down, and the cat says, "Mad, absolutely mad," said Mogget. As he watched the dog get drenched, the cat had resumed his post near the mast and was once again licking himself dry. But then she always was. "I heard that," barked the dog. "Of course you did. I don't suppose I could trouble you to take off my collar so I can get properly dry." Lirael shakes her head, because Lirael's looking at the cat. "Well, I suppose if the village idiot here wouldn't do it, there's no chance you would." That's Sam he's talking about, the village idiot. "It's enough to make me wish I'd volunteered in the first place." What's he mean? Volunteered back here? Or volunteered serve the abhorsons? Because he doesn't really volunteer. "Lirael, what didn't you volunteer for?" But the little cat only smiled. Notice, enough to make me wish I'd volunteered in the first place. Why? Then I wouldn't be forced out all the time on these barbaric boat trips. If I volunteered in the first place, then what is Mogget saying? I wouldn't be bound with this collar. I wouldn't be enslaved like I am. Sam says, "Be careful with Mogget. He's nearly killed my mother in his unbound form, 3 times in fact, during the time she's been the abhorsen." Lirael, pulls her hand back. Okay. So, we'll stop there. We'll meet on Wednesday. We won't meet very long because we don't have a whole lot more to discuss. Okay, make sure you read this carefully because it's due a week from today, between 9:30 and 10 in here. All right.